Okay, we haven't done an update on the Ranchero in a little while. Been super busy around here and finally got a chance to get back on it and do some things. Part of the problem is we blew the motor in the race car a few weeks ago, and so we've got stuff strode everywhere and waiting on parts to come back for that. And anyway, I had a couple of days with a little extra time, so I thought I'd get back on this and do a video. To catch you up, I did finish the air conditioning on it, and I'll try to show a little more on that once I've got it down off the lift. And you know, I have driven it some, tested it, it's working well. Been playing around a little bit with new distributor and timing curve and carburetor, and just trying to get this thing where it's a good daily driver. But right now we're in the process of doing four-wheel disc brakes, and I've already got the front done. Super easy. Used a Scarebird bracket kit, and you can kind of see the gold part is the part you buy, and they've got about 3 different options for this car, and we had already converted this to 65 Mustang spindles, V8 spindles. We were already 5 lugs, so a couple of options for that would have been using the original hubs with a 10-inch rotor. And then this option, actually you just take everything off down to the spindle, and you use a 69 to 70 Ford Mustang rotor. It's a rotor and hub, and you can get all this stuff from O'Reilly's, and you just put that on your spindle. Bearings are standard, and then you bolt the bracket on first, of course, put the rotor on, and then these are Chevrolet Celebrity single piston floating calipers. And I think the brake hose, which I was real happy the way it laid, I think that's a Cadillac Eldorado brake hose. It has a bracket on it, a little metal bracket you have to cut off. But other than that, I mean, it hooked up just perfect, lays good. And these are 11¼ inch, so plenty of stopping power there. And then for the back, Scarebird offers 2 options. They offer an option for a small bearing forward rear end and a big bearing. And this is a small bearing rear end. I actually thought it was a big bearing because it's a Curry housing with taper roller bearings, and I thought sure they were big bearing, but the bolt pattern is not quite right on these brackets. So anyway, we're putting the big 11-inch brakes on this housing regardless. All we've got to do is work out the bolt pattern. You can see the 2 diagonal holes will line up by just clocking the bracket a little bit, and so I've got to rework the holes, and no big deal. It's just a piece of metal. You do want to have these holes snug on these though, and not have a lot of slop in them, because if you think about it, that bracket's trying to twist when you hit the brakes. So just have to make sure that you either fill in with some weld, or make sure you got at least 2 of your holes really snug, and it'll be fine. Bracket just bolts on, and then it uses, can't remember what type caliper. I think it's a Thunderbird rotor and a Eldorado Cadillac rear caliper. And here's one of the calipers for the rear, and this is a real popular setup for street rod 9-inch rear brakes, because it's got a built-in ratchet assembly for emergency brakes. And they're a little quirky. I did a set on a guy's 35 Chevrolet a few months ago, and you kind of gotta monkey with them a little bit to get it dialed in. If you don't get the emergency brake part right, they claim you'll have a soft pedal, but it's just a matter of getting it ratcheted and snugged up before you start bleeding brakes, and then everything's fine. So that's what we got for that. And I'm going to stay with the master cylinder I've got currently on it, which is a dual reservoir 67 Mustang drum brake. I'm thinking based on everything I've researched that it will work okay with this setup, because it's the same reservoir front and rear, which will work for disc brakes. I am going to add a proportioning valve, and just in case we need to adjust the back a little bit. And then if for some reason the pedal doesn't feel right, or I feel like I need a bigger bore or more capacity, whatever, it's no big deal to change the master cylinder. There's a lot of options for the Ford master cylinder that will bolt on. I am going to leave it manual brakes unless it's just horrible. I'm thinking with 11-inch brakes all the way around, this thing should stop amazingly well, because the car doesn't weigh anything, and heck, it stopped good with the drum brakes. So anyway, we're gonna try to stay with that. I've already replaced the master cylinder when I did the drum brake upgrade. And what we're gonna do with the proportioning valve, I think I'm gonna mount it under the cavity in the bed. I've got a little lift up door, and I got to looking, and the rear brake line stops right there, and I think I can mount that proportioning valve under that panel in the bed, and the piping will be real easy. And then if I need to adjust it, you just lift that storage lid open and adjust your brakes. So that's kind of going to be the plan. So anyway, right now my axles are at a friend's machine shop. The center hole in the rotor was a little bigger than the center part of the axle, and I'm having him make some sleeves for that. So I get those picked up, and then I can finish up this rear. So anyway, we'll continue on with this update. Okay, we got the rear disc brakes on finally. Just go over a couple of quick things we ran into. Again, this was the Scarebird kit. This is for the big bearing Ford. Even though we have a small bearing housing, all we had to do was re-drill holes for the brackets, and everything worked out good. You can see I had adapter rings made for the axles, so they fit the center hole of the rotor real well. And this does use a Cadillac Eldorado caliper, and you can see, you can get up under here. The light's kind of bad right here, but you can see it's got the built-in emergency brake, and that's the tricky thing. And there's tons of online videos about how to set those up and get them adjusted. We ran into one weird thing on this one. Couldn't get it to bleed, and this caliper, brand new caliper, the bleeder hole had never been drilled through into the piston cavity. Yeah, I was pretty frustrated about that, but you know, that's just typical anymore. Everything you buy now is junk, or it takes forever to get it. So we had to take the caliper apart, drill the hole. Then I damaged the seal getting it put back together. Had to order a rebuild kit for a brand new caliper, and I got all that put back together, and it's working. We've got the brakes bled out. Still got to hook up the emergency brake cables. I've got to, I don't know if you can see it or not. You really can't. The brackets that hold the end of the cable have got to be moved about 2 inches back, so the cable will lay good, and then I've got to work on the length of the cable and tie it into the stock pull emergency brake, but shouldn't be a problem. So anyway, and we ran into one other thing that was interesting. I told you I was going to use the master cylinder I already had, and here's a picture of the fronts. Got those done. But anyway, the master cylinder that we already had was for a 67 Mustang drum. So it's equal cavities, and I thought, well, you know, that may work out well with this four-wheel disc. I had read that there was enough capacity in it. It's about the right bore size. But when we got the brakes bled, they were pretty much locked up. So I realized real quick that master cylinder has built-in residual valves for drum brakes, and that holds a little bit of pressure on them. So I got to doing a little checking and took the master cylinder off, and all you got to do is pop the brass seats out, and the valves are right behind the seats. Take the two valves out, pop the seats back in, put it on, bled it out. Everything's feels perfect. Won't know till we test drive it, but again, the brakes are freeing up, pedal feels good, and I believe we'll be good to go. So I'll continue to update after we've done some test drives. Okay, finally got the four-wheel disc brake conversion done on the Ranchero, and driven it a few times, and everything's working pretty good. Got the emergency brakes hooked up and working just fine. I'm beginning to think I might try an 1 1/16 bore master cylinder. The one that was on there works great after taking those residual valves out. Car stops nice and straight and smooth. The pedal effort is minimal. I just kind of feel like it probably needs a little more volume, which will stiffen the pedal a little bit, but it'll also make the brakes a little quicker, a little more firm, and that's kind of normal with disc. And I might actually consider a booster, but I really don't want to put a booster on it. It's just hard to get one in these tight spots. So anyway, but it's fine for now. No issues, no safety issues. Car's nice and smooth. Put all new bearings front and rear in the process of doing this, and it's really smooth now. And got the air conditioning finished up. I was going to show some shots of the finished product there. Now this is not a this is not a show car, so everything's not perfect and neat and tied and routed yet. But one thing I do like about it is where the compressor and alternator are at. I've got them low on the motor, so when you walk up to this thing, it doesn't just scream street rod or hey, I have air conditioning, or hey, I've been modernized. It's still, at first glance, you've still got the classic chrome valve cover Hypo 289 look from the 60s, and that makes me pretty happy. I mean, again, it's got something once you get to look in the MSD box and receiver dryers over here and everything, and need to neaten up the wiring just a little bit, but got most of the hoses run out of sight around behind the engine. And again, the compressor's down where it doesn't jump up and scream at you. I've done a few conversions for people on street rods and so forth, and they don't really have much choice, but the kits put the alternator and the compressor really high on the engine, and you got hoses and everything just blocking the view of the engine completely, and they're just not that attractive. But again, that's what the price we pay to stay cool, I guess. So anyway, I'll wrap this video up for now. I've got some other stuff going on, so it might be a few weeks before I get back on this. Probably the next thing is to go ahead and finish new side glasses, door felts, and weather stripping, and door panels and kick panels, and that'll pretty much button up the interior and make it look somewhat complete. And then we'll move on from there. Thanks for watching.